On one rainy day, Run, an academy student, is complaining about his loss to a rock, paper, scissors, which led him to buy pokers for his dorm companions. While on his way, he suddenly sees a girl falling from the sky. He tries to catch the girl before she tumbles, but when he succeeds, the collision also sends him down. He ends up kissing the unknown girl as a result of the accident. The two were stunned by what had occurred, and Rin instantly stood up and apologized. He felt he swallowed something as he gulped, before asking the girl if she was okay. The beautiful girl mesmerized his sight after he saw her. After a short while, the girl also stands up, but suddenly, she grabs Ren's shirt while asking him to give back what he took. Rin shakes her off and angrily denies that he took something. Instead of being grateful, the girl arrogantly says that she didn't even want him to save her and of course kiss her. Rin explains that it was only an accident and denies her accusation again. The girl didn't give up and wanted to prove it with an examination. The people in the vicinity gossip about them. They accuse Rin of stealing as an excuse to flirt with the girl. Meanwhile, the girl touched Ren's body to look for something. The people around them see it, so they assume that they're just couples having fun. Rin yells at her to stop, but just before he asks her what exactly she lost, he senses an excruciating pain in his belly. The girl approaches him and tells him that he'll die if he doesn't return what he took. Suddenly, he lightly pushed her, but she got blown away to a distance. Just when he wondered why he suddenly got strange strength, he noticed his fingers turning green. Unfortunately, the people around him saw it too. He asks the girl to stop making a scene as he complains about the sudden pain he's experiencing. All of a sudden, a black luxurious car arrived at the scene. From it, men in suits and sunglasses boarded the way down. An old man walks towards them and surprisingly bows down to the girl, who he refers to as Miss Yenzi. He informs her that his master instructed them to take her home, and while at it, he invites Rin too. Yenzi agrees, hoping that they can teach him a lesson for snatching her stuff. Just as he begins to fear for his survival, two muscular men approach and threaten him. Inside the building owned by Mingri Group, guys in black suits lined up to welcome Yenzi home. Confused by what's happening, cold sweat runs from Rin, as he asks Yenzi if her father is Zhao, the famous terrifying CEO of the Mingri Group. It turns out that his speculation is right when Yenzi smiles mischievously while introducing herself as Zhao's daughter. This information made Rin nervous, thinking that he messed with the daughter of a very powerful man. Eventually, the large door is within their sight, and after numbers appeared, they made it into the entrance. Ren's spirit tries to escape his body, when numerous important people give him a cold stare. Regardless, he tries to be dauntless and walk past the big door bravely. When he arrived, he saw a big, intimidating man in the room. Zhao inquired about Ren's identity with a stern gaze, and he nervously responded. He trembled when Zhao asked him if he ate his daughter's internal core, and all he could express was that it was unknown to him. Zhao's menacing aura strengthens, but surprisingly, what he does after is smile and tell Rin he'll need to marry his daughter. Yenzi hears the abrupt declaration and yells at his father to complain. Zhao merely grins and comforts her daughter, because he imagined she was just delighted. After that, his demeanor suddenly changed. He then asked Rin whether his body hurt, and green skin appeared on his wrist. Rin was puzzled as to how he knew it. Zhao reveals that it is because he ate Yenzi's dragon core. He tells him that it is the dragon tribe's power source, and it helps them fly and change the world. Zhao showed him a presentation of his power, but because it was unbelievable, he only thought of it as a hologram of some sort. With a serious tone, Zhao shows Rin what'll happen if a human like him eats a dragon core. The representation forms an imperfect circle. The circle unsteadily changed its form, and afterward it blew up. Rin was taken aback, but he knew right away what it meant. He would die. Zhao goes back to the topic and asks him what he thinks of the marriage. Not even amused, he told him that Yenzi was childish, rude, spoiled, and self-centered. Yenzi heard all of it, and she immediately blew her fuse. But Zhao stopped her. He tells Rin that as a dragon, Yenzi can't cultivate their arts or return to her true form without her core. After that, he cries as he reveals that she can also die. In the worst-case scenario, Rin was surprised and concerned. Even how ill-tempered she is, he still doesn't want to be the cause of her death. Because of that, he suggests just taking the core from him and giving it back to Yenzi. But Zhao told him that because his human aura affected it, it could get worse if they returned it to Yenzi directly. Furious, Rin yells to Zhao his concern. Yenzi was touched deeply by his behavior and finally thought he was nice. Zhao suddenly caressed Ren's hair to assure him she'd survive if he married his daughter. Ren is hesitant because of the age difference, but Zhao tells him they can just be engaged at first. He also instructs him to cultivate and strengthen their arts until he can give half of the core to Yanzi while they make love to each other. This method surprised both Ren and Yanzi when Zhao embarrassingly revealed it. Zhao asked Ren what he thought about his proposal, and the two embarrassingly expressed they didn't want it. Afterwards, Zhao urges Ren to go home. The butler shows him the way, but Ru, a member of the dragon tribe, interrupts him. He expresses his disgust at the idea of Ren, a human, becoming Yanzi's husband, but Zai herself pushes him away. He gets up and glares at Ren, but he gets stopped again, this time by Qing. The vice principal of the school, Ren, greets him, and Qing invites him to return to the school together. So they both went, and Ru followed them. When they get out of the car, Qing urges Ru to give Ren the Cultivation Art Spirit Concentration Scroll, but he insults Ren first before giving it. Because of that, Qing reprimanded him for his disrespectful speech. Some others who witnessed it made remarks on their vice principal's polite behavior. Before they leave, he reminds Ren to try his best to cultivate. While Ren was taking a look at the scroll, someone patted his shoulder. When he turns around to see it, he sees his friends who tease him for becoming Yanzi's fiancé, and the vice principal's son-in-law. He strongly denies the accusation, but Jian said the news already spread around their campus. All of a sudden, they saw the figure of Yujia, Ren's crush, fiddling through her phone. When they cast a glance her way, one of his friends, Manhwa, informs him that he trusts Ren wouldn't act inappropriately behind Yujia's back. Ren immediately covers his mouth so that no one can hear him when he talks about Ren's love confession. Ren blames him for her interaction with Yujia, which becomes awkward. All of a sudden, he noticed Yujia was looking at them. But while he gazes at her, she turns her face in the other direction and runs away. After Jian teased him that Yujia had a crush on him too, his phone suddenly vibrated, and when he opened it, he saw Yujia's text. Ren was happy after reading it. He tells her that it was just a misunderstanding when people said some men took him away. She tells him she's worried about him and invites him to walk together after class. He views that as an opportunity to tell her the whole situation. The ring of the school bell resounds. The guys in the room didn't seem to mind their appearance until someone shouted that their teacher, Suhan, arise. All of a sudden, their faces gotten way cooler. Suhan entered the room with a large bag in her hand. When she reached the table, all of the guys shouted to get her attention. She puts the bag on the table and warns the students who sent him love letters that they'll receive an F in the exam if they do it again. Afterward, she immediately started her class. Ronghua says that whoever they are, they deserve the F. But Jane is one of them and seems to enjoy it. Su heard them and told them to be quiet. Rin whispers to Ronghua about Su's coldness. That is the reason why she has no boyfriend. But Su notices it and yells at him to focus. Dejected, he opened his phone and texted Yujia, inviting her to dinner after class. Yujia immediately saw his text. Time passed and the bell rang again, this time to signal the end of the class. Run and Yujia walked together right after leaving the room. But all of a sudden, Su calls him to come to her office. Because of jealousy, Ronghua cries and Jane locks Ren's neck into his shoulder. Meanwhile, Yujia seems to worry about Ren. In Su's office, she mysteriously asked Ren which side is he on. This question made Ren baffled. All of a sudden, Su grabs his hand and makes an outbalanced. She puts her palm on Ren's stomach and a blue light appears. Strangely, she got taken aback after. She restrains Ren's movements and asks him why a human would have the aura of the East Ocean Dragon tribe. Ren replied that he just accidentally swallowed a dragon core, so she released her hold. She finally lets him go and says she'll just confirm what he said through the tribe themselves. While Ren is wondering why Su knew about dragons, she unexpectedly restrains his movement once again by locking his neck. Su threatened to kill him if he told anyone about the dragon tribes. Confused, he asks her who she is and Su reveals she's an inspector. When the night comes, Ren is trying to cultivate the yards. But afterward, he sighs for not having a good result, even for days of cultivating. His phone suddenly vibrates, and he receives a text of a dinner invitation from Zhou himself. He becomes more dispirited when he thinks about having dinner with the Dragon King's family. At dinner, Zhou's wife, Mrs. Hongyu, offers him seafood and he accepts it with a troubled face. Yanzi notices it and yells that it's her favorite. Meanwhile, Zhou got stopped by Mrs. Hongyu for trying to get meat. Rin unexpectedly inquired about what an inspector is. Zhou gets alarmed and asks whether he has already encountered one. Rin tells him about Su, and Mrs. Hongyu surprisingly recognizes her. She tells Rin that inspectors are supervisors of dragon-related matters and advises him to keep his distance from them. Rin is surprised that they're that powerful. Zhao teaches him about the existence of 8 cultivation realms. He revealed that most of the inspectors can reach the 8th or even higher from that. He told him that Su could even defeat 2 Lu Qing combined. Rin imagines what that scenario is and is amazed that Su is strong. Zhao reminds him not to let his guard down, as the inspectors can just execute anyone they consider guilty. But he also assures him that they won't let it happen. He tells him that once he gets a legal identity as one of the dragon tribes, the inspectors can't just disturb him. Mrs. Hongyu inquires about the state of his cultivation, but unfortunately, all he can tell her is that it's not going well. When he says that his cultivation is not going well, Mrs. Hongyu shows a worried expression. Even so, she still comforts and encourages Rin. Afterward, she asks him to help Yanzi in her English lessons, but Yanzi herself is opposed to the idea. Rin felt insulted, so he fought back, but Yanzi didn't like what he said, so she left after throwing a tantrum. To make it worse, Rin yells at her even after she goes into her room. Zhao and Mrs. Hongyu felt troubled, and they apologized for Yanzi's attitude. While walking him to the exit, Mrs. Hongyu tells Rin that even if Yanzi acted like that, she still has good intentions. Afterward, Rin bids goodbye to the couple. While on his way home, he contemplates Mrs. Hongyu's statement about Yanzi having good intentions. But suddenly, upon checking his pocket, he noticed that his cards and wallet were gone. He immediately runs to go back to Zhao's place where he left it. When he arrived, he saw Zhao and Mrs. Hongyu having a conversation about him. Zhao tells his wife to listen to Yanzi's wish of not telling Rin about a particular thing, but Mrs. Hongyu disagrees. She tells Zhao that Rin needs to cultivate and ultimately transfer half of the dragon core to Yanzi within 3 years, or else she will die. But contrary to what Mrs. Hongyu wants, Zhao doesn't want Rin to feel guilty when he finds out Yanzi is risking his life to protect him. Mrs. Hongyu mentions their other option, but still hesitates because it'll lead to Ren's death. Having heard all of these, Rin realizes how much Yanzi is sacrificing just so that he can continue to live. He scans his body, who have dragon scales in hand and a dragon core inside. He leaves the house thinking about helping Yanzi in her lessons tomorrow. While all of this is happening, Yanzi is silently staring at the moonlight. Meanwhile, when Ryu and an old man are informed that Yanzi will die before she hits her 20s, they strongly suggest forcefully taking the core inside Rin. The old man also agrees, and just when Ryu plans to leave and kill Rin, Yanzi enters the room and stops their plan. Ryu embarrassingly defends his scheme, but Yanzi tells him that Rin is innocent. She yells her unwillingness to take his life just to save hers. Zhao laughs. He pats Yanzi's head to assure her that he has an idea in mind. Afterward, Yanzi screams into her pillow because she doesn't want to kill or marry Rin. The day after, Rin knocks on Yanzi's door to help her with the lessons. Yanzi just slightly opens it, and Rin threatens her to open it fully or else he will tell Mrs. Hongyu. However, Yanzi still refused. Rin then goes off to Mrs. Hongyu, but before he does, Yanzi finally opens the lock to stop him. She suddenly stumbles, and Rin catches her with his body, but she immediately jumps away to keep her distance. She leads him into the room, but she still stops Rin from entering. Unfortunately, the lock and door handle broke, and she got slightly blown away. Rin crosses his arms and teases her. Yanzi touched her back, which was aching due to the accident. She gets her notebook and suddenly throws it towards Rin so that he can check it out. Surprised he was not able to dodge, so he got hit in the head, Yanzi was astonished. She asked him why he didn't dodge, and was surprised because she assumed he suddenly got stupid because of being hit. Surprisingly, Rin pats her head instead of lashing out at her. Yanzi was flustered because of suddenly getting caressed. Embarrassed, she asks him to get his hand out of her. Afterward, Rin gently urges her to start their English lessons. This makes Yanzi confused about his sudden change of behavior. Rin starts to analyze Yanzi's lessons before he teaches her the mistakes she made in her homework. Unfortunately, Yanzi is having trouble understanding the lectures. As hours pass by, she tries her best to absorb what she can, but she's still having difficulties. Eventually, she got tired of doing it. Rin teases her childish behavior, and he invites her to play a game before they continue again. Suspicious that he'll tell Mrs. Hongyu about it, Yenzi finds it hard to believe. So Rin joined him as her accomplice. Yenzi regained her high spirits. Excited about the game, she played it with all she had, only to get the game over in the end. Rin pesters her lack of game skills, so she gets mad about it. All of a sudden, he sits behind her and takes control of the game. He tells Yenzi some helpful game tactics, but she doesn't believe it will work. In the end, he stands up and lets her control the game. Yenzi shouts her victory as she finally wins it. He asks her if his tactics worked, but Yenzi only admits that she's the one who made the tactic a success. However, she finally acknowledges Ren's usefulness. All of a sudden, Mrs. Hongyu enters the room with a plate of food in her hands, but she is surprised by the nice atmosphere between the two, so she immediately takes her leave, not even giving the food. Yenzi and Run got confused about Mrs. Hongyu's actions. Then they finally realized how close their distance was. Embarrassed, Rin instantly jumps away to the bed to maintain their space. The two became flustered as they gave each other side glances. To break the ice, Yenzi asks Rin how his cultivation going. Still blushing, Rin tells her that he feels something missing, so he can't make progress. Yenzi sees this as an opportunity for her to teach Rin, but the words she says seem cold. Even so, Rin is happy that she volunteered to teach him. Yenzi gets up from her seat to give Rin a thumbs up and assures him she got this. Afterward, she tells him that there are 3 levels of the spirit concentration scroll. The first level is to communicate with heaven and earth while purifying the body at the same time. The second is to guide the energy to strengthen the body, and the last level is to release that energy. Only then, that he can cultivate more advanced techniques. As Rin imagines it as a super being with a large ball above his hands, Yenzi reminds him not to miss even a single level of the technique. Afterward, she tells him that all things can reinforce each other. After explaining that the scroll is a water cultivation technique, and he needs to balance the softness and hardness of the water to successfully cultivate it, Rin focused and closed his eyes to achieve the state that he needed for cultivation. All of a sudden, a blue little ball appeared between his palms. A small water droplet suddenly drops, making a sound, and when he opens his eyes, he finally enters the state inside his mind. He saw mysterious white random lines, and after that, his mind and body absorbed the energy and aura that came within himself. Sweat is running down his face when he wakes himself up. After he makes a victory pose, Yenzi is happy that he made a breakthrough because of her teachings. Grateful, Rin says that it's because she's a princess, and it makes Yenzi more embarrassed. She told him to leave because their lectures were over. Before going his way, he assures her that he'll be back to teach her English lessons on another day. Zhao and Hongyu also bid Rin a temporary goodbye as he leaves their mansion. But suddenly, Yenzi yells at him from the veranda to encourage him to keep cultivating. In response, he gladly gives her a thumbs up. The next day, Ren's classmates are mysteriously gossiping about him. But when he turns around to look at them, they stop talking as if nothing is happening. Rin is confused about their actions who seem to be secretly staring at him. Suddenly, he views his phone and looks at his previous text conversation with Yujia. As he powers it off, he embraces himself to explain to her the whole situation, which he was not able to do due to Sue's interruption. Surprisingly, someone talks to him, teasing him about his sudden popularity. It was Yujia who listed the girls who encountered Rin, such as Sue and the limo who took him. Rin was cool, and just slightly surprised she was interested in gossip. Yujia just smiled at him. Yujia approaches Rin, smiling at him. In response, Rin blushed while expressing his shock that she was interested in gossip. Yujia immediately denies his accusation and explains that she just wants to ask about their plan last time, which got interrupted. Yujia flustered, thinking that it may look like she's asking Rin out. Rin looks gently at her, remembering how Miss Sue ruined their walk together last time. He encourages himself to do the explanation as of today. He stands up and bravely asks Yujia if she's available tonight. The evening arrived, and in a place full of eateries, Yujia and Rin can be seen sitting in front of each other. With chopsticks in her hand, Yujia mesmerizes Ren's sight. She finally asks about the limousine that picked up Rin and asks him if anything bad happened. Rin quickly shakes his head as he denies it and tells her that he took a part-time job as a teacher, so it was his client's car. Yujia's hand trembles. Right after, she asks him if the cute girl she saw, which is Z, is his student, and Rin nods firmly in agreement. With a sad expression, Yuja talks about the lovely face of his student. Her sudden statement made Rin perplexed, but she said it was nothing, and changed the topic by asking the reason why Miss Su called him in her office. Rin recalled the grueling body locks he experienced as he lied that she just scolded him for not listening to his friend's babbles. Silence envelopes the place after his story. When only the rustles of trees can be heard and the smoke coming from the hot noodles, Yuja suddenly asks Rin if it was also a joke, when Ronghua and Jaein told her that he likes her. Rin tries to calm himself to not show embarrassment as he recalls what happened that day. In a luxurious venue, Ronghua and Jaein are forcing Rin to confess his love to Yuja. Rin tries his best to escape from Jaein's shoulder lock, while he denies their assumptions that something's going on between him and her. But Jaein assures him that something will happen when their plan works. All of a sudden, Ronghua tells him to stop, because he already spotted Yuja walking towards them. He carefully peeks at her figure to hide his presence, and at the right time, he surprised her to stop in her tracks. He fiddles his glasses, while he gives Yuja a love letter from Rin, and announces that Rin has liked her for a very long time, and he wants to be her boyfriend. Yuja was astonished as she blushed from looking at the love letter on Ronghua's hand. She then receives the letter and pronounces Ren's name out of surprise, but all of a sudden, Jaein pushes Rin toward Yuja to let them talk to each other. This makes Yuja more surprised, as she unconsciously drops the letter from her hand. Jaein and Ronghua left the two on their own, now that they had done their heroic mission. As Yuja and Rin talk to each other while being flustered, the letter slowly drops to the ground, along with pink petals. The smoke from their hot noodles doesn't interrupt the two, and awkwardness comes to them. Rin avoids eye contact when he says that his friends were really just kidding at that time. Meanwhile, Yuja just kind of expected it, even though disappointment can be seen in her face upon hearing his answer. After that, she asks Rin if he has something more to say to her, but Rin is confused because he has no idea what is she talking about. Embarrassed, Yuja plays with her hair and asks about his feelings, disregarding the jokes his friends made. Ren's eyes enlarge because of surprise, but before he can answer her, Yuja giggles and tells him that she's just teasing him. She also assumes that his nervousness comes from being troubled by weird people, but Rin is just confused because he doesn't know any weird people who trouble him. However, as they're having an awkward yet happy conversation, Ru observes them from a high place, unbeknownst to Rin. Ru watches the two lead the place while walking side by side to each other. The beautiful smile of Yuja irritates him, as he curses the nerve of Rin to walk with another woman beside his fiancée, Yenzi. Rin reaches his stop, so he bids his goodbye to Yuja. In response, Yuja shows him her mesmerizing smile as she also waves goodbye. She hums while walking away happily, and Rin just stares at her, comparing her gentle side to Yenzi's little devil personality. All of a sudden, he heard a voice coming from above. He looks in the direction of the voice, wondering who he is, but when he does, he sees a furious Ru descending from the sky. His eyes widen. With his arms crossed, Ru asks Rin if the girl he was together with Yuja knows if he's currently engaged. At the same time, when Ru is close to landing on the ground, he threatens Rin that he will teach him a lesson for what he just committed. Rin denies his accusation and emphasizes that he and Yenzi are not really in a kind of romantic relationship. However, Ru didn't listen to his explanation. Right after he landed, he dashes quickly towards Rin, wounding his cheeks as a result. With only using his thumb, Ru attacked Rin while telling him not to dare call Yenzi by her name. Rin was surprised at the quickness of Ru's attack. He asks him if that is the magic art of the dragon tribe, but at that moment, Ru already moved to Ren's blind spot. Ru immediately hits Ren's face with his elbow, and Rin fails to dodge it. He steps back from the strong impact of the attack, and in answer to his question, Ru tells him that he doesn't need any art to deal with a weakling. He smiles sinisterly as he raises his right foot, immediately after he sees that Rin anticipates Ru's attack. Ru then jumps towards him and releases a powerful kick that hits Ren's forearm. Rin receives the strong power that came with Ru's attack, and just right after that, he is blown away in the distance. Ru is not satisfied as he goes into a leap position and jumps again towards Rin. He then slams him to the ground by punching his stomach. Ren's eyes widened in pain as he thought about how quick Ru was, making it difficult for him to avoid any of his attacks. Ren lies on the ground, unable to fight back, and unheard of Ru's insult. Ru starts to grab Ren's clothes, after emphasizing that martial arts is all it takes for him to defeat his weak battle prowess. Rin cursed his weakness, but the situation was not already in his favor. Now that Ru was pulling him up in the air while pointing out the inferiority of humans to dragons like himself. Despite how hopeless this battle for him is, Rin is still trying to think of something to survive until he finally thought of the teachings he learned from Yenzi. He then decided to give it a shot, and after struggling, he managed to focus the energy in his body into his left hand. All of a sudden, he tries to punch Ru. However, he is not the slightest threatened, because he is so sure that it'll be nothing but a scratch. Ren's fist goes straight into his face, and that's when he suddenly notices the energy within it. He immediately releases Ren from his grip, and because of that, he successfully dodges Ren's punch, which is embedded with his energy power. He stares at the attack that almost succeeded in damaging him and immediately backs away to maintain the distance. Ren pants, while he thinks that it was too close to finally landing a hit. Ru asks him how he managed to do that, and he tells him that it was all because of Yenzi, while provoking him if he's afraid to get surpassed by him someday. In the next moment, Ru is already at his back, telling him not to get carried away, because he could just reach only the first level. Afterward, he flies away, leaving Run with discouragement. The next day in the mansion of the Dragon King, Mrs. Hongyu can be seen worried about Run, who is covered with wounds on his face, by what he says, the effects of accidentally falling. Yenzi calls him a fool and stupid for suddenly getting into a dumb accident. As a result, Mrs. Hongyu scolded her while Rin blamed her for what happened. The topic suddenly changes when Mrs. Hongyu invites Rin to join them in their trip to the Greenstone Mountain. After he thinks that the location is a famous scenery spot, he realizes that it's strange because Yenzi is not protesting. Embarrassed, Yenzi turns her face the other way while denying that she was the one who invited him, even though no one's accusing her of it. In the beautiful scenery of the famous Greenstone Mountain, Rin joins the Zhao family in their sightseeing. While walking, he got insulted by Yenzi as a country bumpkin, after he says that it is his first time riding in that place. Irritated, Rin tells her that she can stay at home if she doesn't like him going with them. The two click their tongue after they reach the entrance of the Greenstone Hotel. All of a sudden, a guy in a tracksuit spies Rin, thinking that his smile will be gone after he makes his plan a success. Meanwhile, Rin screams from amazement when he and the others enter the hotel. Sparks can be seen in his eyes while he looks around the luxurious place from the pillars, chandeliers, and the indoor fountain. However, when he looks at his side, the figures of Zhao Onyu and even Yenzi cannot be seen anymore. He then decided to wait for them in his room, and when he reached the elevator, he wondered who would be his roommate. He gulped while looking at the card in his hand, as he imagined a seductive Yenzi in a bath outfit, showing him different attractive poses. Rin once again gulps when that thought entered his mind. He goes out of the elevator and reaches the door. As he swipes the card to enter the room, he sees a shadow resembling Yenzi, who just got out of the shower. Rin shows his determination and opens the room, but what enters his eyes is the figure of Zhao who just got out of the bath, asking him to take a shower too. Sobbing, his back slides from the wall due to the disappointment. Outside the hotel, where trees and an owl reside in the place, Yenzi is complaining about the fact that her parents made her climb the mountain along with Rin. With a flustered face, Yenzi tells him to stay away from her, so Rin maintains his distance while thinking about his promise to Onyu, which is to protect Yenzi. All of a sudden, a snake shows up and Yenzi screams at the terrifying sight of it. She accidentally stumbles upon a rock and slowly falls off to the ground, but Rin arrives at her aid to save her in the nick of time. She looks above to see Ren's face, while he assures her that the snake she saw was not toxic at all. After getting too close to each other, Yenzi walks away out of embarrassment. Yenzi then denies that she was scared and tells him that it was just disgusting. Rin just agrees to what she said and changes the situation by saying that he is the one who's afraid and not her. After that, he sticks close to Yenzi while inviting her to walk together. He immediately grabs her wrist and leads the way for her. As the owl sleeps, the next moment, the two finally reach the top of the mountain. It was already dusk, and there were little to no people in there. Yenzi's expression got serious all of a sudden, but it turns out that she just changed gears and was overexcited as she happily pointed out various tourist spots in the area for them to check out one by one. Now she is the one holding Ren's hand while being his tour guide, but Ren feels that she's suspicious and assumes that there's a trap waiting for him. They reach the stone tablet, and after Ren reads the contents, Yanzi happily teaches her about Master Zhan, a famous Taoist who made it. She then points out a part that describes the way to command the water. Rin doesn't waste time and reads it immediately until he finally understands. Due to her overdose of excitement, Yanzi urges him to try the spirit concentration scroll immediately. He then closes his eyes and focuses on his concentration, but a large man playing with his phone is on his way to bump them. Right after that, Ren's concentration is lost when the man suddenly hits him, which leads to the man's phone being broken. However, the big man blames him for the accident, as he cracks his knuckles while telling him to pay for it. Without the slightest feeling of being intimidated, Rin asks the big man what he wants, to which the man answered immediately that he wants money and then an apology to Rin by kneeling and kowtowing. Yanzi steps up, angered because of his unfair conditions. However, her foot suddenly trips into a piece of rock again, and she immediately sits, while trembling in pain. The man then approaches her, while informing her not to bother, and just move aside. Rin immediately runs to guard Yanzi from the big man. He slaps the man's hand away from Z, yelling at him to stay away from her. The man smiles, enraged by Ren's heroic actions. Rin bravely faces him, but Yanzi warns him when he finds out that the man is a cultivator. She pulls Ren's clothes while telling him that he is no match for a second-level cultivator opponent. However, Rin just gently pats her hand and smiles at her to not make her worry. Yanzi is speechless, and thus unable to stop him. While all of this is happening, Ru is happily observing the turn of events in an inconspicuous place. He smiles upon revealing that the scroll he gave to Rin is incomplete, thus, he expects the outcome to be his defeat and his ultimate humiliation in front of Z. In addition, earlier he called the man and gave his task to look for the location of their target, which is Rin. After that, he smiles maniacally as he tells him to teach Rin a lesson, without hurting Z. With a pile of cash prepared, he reminds him to do whatever he wants, as long as he doesn't kill him. Back to the present, the big man mocks Rin by giving him a head start to their fight, but Rin refuses and he immediately runs away, provoking him to start his chase. The ground cracks up when the man prepares his offensive stance. In the next moment, he jumps towards Rin in an attempt to smash him. The rocks turn into debris when he hits it, instead of Rin, who successfully evaded. He then admits Ren's quickness, but Rin also acknowledges the strength of the man, along with their predicament. The smoke hides the man's big figure, but Rin senses that he is already on his way to attack. The man charges at Rin. He quickly ran away and dodged it, but the pavilion where he was earlier was destroyed as a result. Just as he thought that the man perished after getting crashed by the structures, he sees him getting out alive instead. The man yells, irritated by Ren's continuous dodging. He provokes the man in response, forcing him to attempt to catch him right away, but the man is unsuccessful. He can't contain his rage anymore as he attempts to punch him with his big arm, but Rin still manages to evade. When the man temporarily stops, it allows Rin to think of a plan. All of a sudden, he runs away again, while telling him to chase him once more. His weird running direction that seemed to run in circles around the man perplexed him, but his muscle head just saw it as a mere joke. However, the smoke from dust and soil started to form with all of the running that Rin made. It deteriorates the man's vision, not enabling him to tell the right direction. Rin yells, challenging him to do his grand clash. The man didn't hesitate for a second and immediately prepared himself. Right after that, he already charges his way into Rin. Ren's eyes illuminate blue lights all of a sudden, and he surprisingly stops running to greet the man. He changed his stance, and in the next moment, he kicked his foot, spun his body, and used his palm embedded with energy to land a powerful hit on the opponent. The force of his attack eventually resulted in the man bumping into a hard wall, which signals his victory. Ryu's hand slaps his face as he watches the scene that didn't meet his expectations. He sees Ren celebrating his victory with Yanzi, while he angrily swears to stop him on his way to mastering the spirit concentration scroll. Meanwhile, after the incident, Yanzi continuously punches Ren's back to put her down now that she is being carried by him. Ren refuses her plea, saying that she still already has her foot injured. Yanzi suddenly blushes. Afterward, Ren expresses his thanks, after remembering that she tried to stand up for him earlier. Embarrassed, Yanzi tells him that it is because he is too weak. She then slips her tongue, after saying that she wasted her time taking him to the Greenstone Mountain. Because of that, Ren asks her if she is the one who proposed the trip and plans to invite him. In the mountain tracks, Yenzi screams, which forces Run to forget the things she said and reverberate. The sunset dyed the world orange, as Run was running laps, while Yujia silently watched him. Run pants from the exhaustion, but admiration can be seen from Yujia, as she observes Run from a distance while holding the rusty bars. In the city, Ren is walking on the sidewalk while reading the scroll. All of a sudden, a tall guy blocks his way. He then confirms Ren's identity by asking him his name out of the blue. Ren is confused as to what's happening, but he says yes. The guy in a basketball jersey smiles at him, saying that he's been famous lately. Afterward, he then mentions the thing to Miss Sue, and she calls him into her office. Troubled that he meets another Miss Sue fan, Ren tells him that it was just because he's not listening in her class. The aura around the guy changes when he expresses his jealousy to Ren. Without anything important to talk with him, Ren tries to leave. However, the guy places his hand on his shoulder to stop him. He looks down at Ren, pointing out his rudeness to an upperclassman such as himself. All of a sudden, Yujia's voice called out the guy by his name, Shujia. She runs quickly towards the two and pants from exhaustion after reaching them. Ren and Shujia were perplexed by her sudden interruption. Shueijia asks Yujia who she is and what's her relationship with Ren. After hesitating, Yujia then answers him that she's Ren's classmate. All of a sudden, Ren grabs her wrist and stands in front of her to get her out of Zoji's reach. Mysteriously, Zoji tells them that he recognizes Yujia. Both Yujia and Ren were confused as to why he knew about her. Afterward, Zoji reveals that she saw her a couple of times, watching Ren runs. This revelation made Ren happy, but Yujia is embarrassed and denies it as just a coincidence. Meanwhile, Zoji's thoughts are clouded by the envy he feels for Ren, who is not just Miss Sue, but also Yujia. All of a sudden, he approaches Yujia and puts his face near to her, while touching her chin in a position to land a kiss.